Latin America. We have here a case study from Colombia, and Reddick and Multicolor was supposed to be presenting with Charge Anywhere, but I think we have only here Charge Anywhere, but I think that it's not only because we have here the Executive Vice President from Charge Anywhere to present us what's happening in Colombia and how are they accepting secure EMV and admin-based transaction through mobile phone in Colombia. So, please.
Thank you so much. Good to see a lot of familiar faces in here. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. I'm going to read, like she mentioned, we do not have RBM with us in here. However, they have sent the presentation to me as well. So I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit of what we do and certainly the case study of that implementation, which actually recently just won an award as a Project of Impact for Latin America 2013. So tell you a little bit about what we do first in Charge Anywhere. We pretty much work with all the different transaction environments that a merchant can have. So we certainly respect the legacy of payments. If you want to be able to accept payments on a regular terminal, if you have e-commerce solutions that you need, we have Charge Anywhere for Windows, certainly self-standing machines. However, we clearly shine on this concept of converting cell phones and tablets into secure payment acceptance or secure payment issuance devices. We play on both sides of that arena, and for that, we own the PCI. Projects that you may know about, the American Airline project. When you take an American Airline flight, before they will have a point of sale per plane. Now they have a Samsung Note per flight attendant. That's where the full menu of duty-free products, meals, beverage, retail items that you buy on your flight. That is happening through Charge Anywhere technology. Kind of an interesting project because they already had their application that controls that consumer experience with them as the airline. And what we did is that they needed to be able at some point to convert that into a payment transaction. So they had their application, at some point they need to take a PCI payment. They wanted to be able to do point-to-point encryption, and Charge Anywhere enabled that, and ultimately connecting through our gateway to their processor. That case was even more interesting because we had to do some unique transaction throttling, so we can take 18,000 terminals talking to only one merchant ID and digest that data for the processor before it reached them. Then talk to their core application system, and then talk to their vendor, who actually is the one filling up the carts where you're buying solutions on the air. So those are some of the projects you might know about. We are certainly doing a great number of transactions on the air. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a quick few minutes in here to talk about it. It was very surprising to me to come into the CARTES event this year and see all these mobile solutions, right? All of a sudden we're seeing all these different booths with mobile. Kind of always hard to tell. And I think the way this era started, before I came up here to talk, I think I can date that back to June 24th, 2011. The reality was in 2010, but at some point in June 24, 2011, PCI decided that they were going to make this ruling on mobile applications. So the first thing they did is that they categorized mobile applications as category 3. That has to do with anything that is done on a PDA, on a phone, right? And then the second thing that they did is that they came up and say, by the way, we are not going to be evaluating mobile applications. So just for your general knowledge, regardless of who you decide to do business with, when somebody tells you that they have these PCI validations, you can't have what is not there. So today, when PCI decided to say we're going to sit on the sidelines for mobile applications, it kind of created that era of the free-for-all. So pretty much anybody that can develop an application can say, I looked at the PCI rules and regulations, and I'm compliant. And I'm saying I'm compliant, and that is good enough to do that. So, so just for your knowledge, I think that regardless of who you do business with, it's always very good. And probably you have never seen one of these letters because they're not required to do. Before you will get a report on validation, now you get what is called an attestation of validation. And when you look at the text in this attestation of validation, what it really tells you is, listen, we are doing the exact same audit that we were doing before. We're going, and it tells you right there, we are performing all of the required testing procedures, including documentation, review, application functionality testing. The only thing is that because PCI is on the sidelines when it comes to accepting payments on the phone, I cannot give you a report on validation as a quality security assessor, third-party quality security assessor. I can qualify security assessor. I can only give you an attestation of validation. So it will save you all a lot of times if when you start your conversations with so many companies now in the arena, if you start by asking, let me see the attestation of validation of the different operating systems. If they're only telling you that they're qualified based on what they believe, instead of a third party like 403 Labs or any third party qualified security assessor, then you might want to think about it twice. So having said that, things that we're very proud of in Charge Anywhere is the array of validations that we have been able to accomplish. If you're going to work with PIN transactions, EMV transactions, which is the purpose of this presentation, particularly in the case of RBM Colombia, they're complex transactions as it is with regular terminals. When you add phones and tablets to it in different operating systems, Android, Apple, BlackBerry, then you're really adding another level of complication. So to be able to have PTS, to be able to have the different AOBs, to be able to have that by a third-party qualified security assessor, to have the level 1 on the gateway that connects you anywhere and everywhere, those are things that are very public. And again, anybody who has a mobile strategy at this point, I think this bit of information will save you a lot of time as you're looking to possible vendors to help your project. EMV level 1 and 2. Certainly, if you're going to be handling PINs, as you're doing EMV with PIN, or you're doing swipe transactions with PIN, you need to have that TR39 audit as an encryption support organization. You want to make sure that you can look at that as well and confirm. Being on the MPOS list help, being able to show that you have passed MTIP, Visa, IDVT, and being part of the EMV Alliance is also a good thing for us as well. So let's go to the RBM case. Again, I'm going to present, and I hope that I do this project justice when I present the data they have. We are extremely proud of this project. Again, it has been awarded for several things, and on top of that, we believe, it is our honest belief, that this is not just an example for Colombia and Latin America. We believe this is an example for the world, how the thing is done. So one of the things that, who is RBM? RBM is a processor in Colombia. They're owned by the 12 largest banks in the country. They service the 20 largest institutions, among the smaller institutions as well. And pretty much, Colombia had some unique challenges that they wanted to solve with this project. So I don't have to tell you that it's from the World Bank data. Depending on who you're talking to, Colombia is, they say 95% here, they say 99% cash intensive. So the battle in Colombia really is not one car company against the other, is against cash. And a lot of people don't have bank accounts, so you have this issue of financial inclusion and you have this issue of a cash intensive society. So when you put it all together, large urban population, cash intensive, and then you don't have the infrastructure in place when it comes to how you're going to be able to buy products and services. So we go back to what we call the eternal chicken or the egg, right? If I give you money on phones, Colombia happens to be also, and they don't have it in their presentation, but they happen to be selected by Harvard Business as one of the most successful wallet programs out there. A couple of years ago, today they have 2 million users doing 10 million transactions a month. Surprisingly enough, they still call that a pilot. Their definition of a pilot is very different to the definition of other folks. And they have this wallet called La Vivienda Plata. When they started several years ago, they right away had 610,000 users. 310,000 of those users never had any never had any experience with a bank. They were introduced into the banking system through the phone wallet. So that is truly financial inclusion at its best, through a mobile wallet. This wallet works through text messaging, so you get funds from the government, you use a one-time password, you go to an ATM, you take the money out. The concept with that is that as you take the money out, you continue to promote this cash-intensive society instead of solving the issue, becoming those transactions electronically. So they took care of having a great parallel program for financial inclusion and a wallet, but again, there's no terminals where you can go and buy and monetize that for products and services. Today, if you were to look at this based on the data, thanks to Verifone here, of how that looks, if you think that the US has a lot of growth opportunities with about 34 units for every 1,000 people, imagine Colombia with only 3.2 for every 1,000 inhabitants. So the goals of this solution is that they today have 130,000 terminals running in electronic, about 250,000 merchants when you consider the ones that are still working on paper. The reality is that there should be closer to 1.9 million merchants accepting payments on the region. So the idea of this project, RBN Mobile, as it's called, was to take care of that gap from 130,000 that are in electronic to as far as you can go, close to the 2 million that should be accepting payments today. So the top tiers are already taken by regular terminals. The bottom tier of that pyramid is what's going to be solved by the solution. Of course, when you understand that in Colombia you need EMV and you have to start getting involved in that, it's very easy for you to use any kind of audio jack reader and swipe and do a magnetic stripe card transaction. But when you start working on different kind of mode of entry neutral, you need to support some cards with magnetic stripe, some cards with magnetic stripe and PIN, some cards with EMV and PIN. So once you, and of course, one-time password changes for the local wallet as well. So we started getting involved into accommodating the platform to be able to manage those EMV transactions. And of course, you have a process of being able to do remote key injection. These devices that are going to work together with the phones, they no longer go into a secure room to get injected with these keys. You have to have the full infrastructure that includes the HSM as part of the gateway to be able to manage that from the application into this device so you can remotely inject the keys that are needed into this device. And trust me, this is beyond the purpose of this presentation. It is a highly secure, highly robust process to be able to inject keys. You have two types of keys, the pin block keys, the data keys that you manage in these devices in an extremely secure process. So then you have another process you need to work with. Depending on the processor and without specific details to RBM, you might need to start translating pins. Some processors might tell you, I don't want my key on the devices in the front end. I can have my security keys on the HSM. I don't want them in the front end of the devices. So you need to have one key in the front end and you need to have different conversation in the back office. Some processors are talking master session keys, but these devices, they communicate on the right unique key per transaction, dogpipe. So you need to talk to the device in one mode and you need to talk back to the processor in another. Sometimes we have the issue that some of the older processors might only be able to give you one key per session, but you have 100,000 devices behind that session. So you need to accommodate 100,000 devices behind that session, not just one key. So pin translation became a need for the project, and ultimately what you see, the idea that I have was to actually show you live, but ultimately what you're going to see in here is that we created a program that is mode of entry neutral. So depending on the segment, one of the key items in here in this project, RBN Mobile, they did not want it to tie the infrastructure to one particular peripheral. It is on the lessons learned that we'll cover at the end. To create your whole ecosystem around a given peripheral is certainly a big mistake. It's like creating your full infrastructure for one phone. You know, these things will continue to change. Today you're going to have one from this company. Tomorrow, you know, there's 52 top manufacturers in the US. When you walk around the floor, you see an array of solutions, you know, most of them not yet in the EMV 1 or 2 or things like that, but they're definitely going to continue to change. And you might have, within the same project, you want to have an application that for the smaller segment that might have smaller risk, maybe EMV with signature swipe is good enough to an audio jack reader. Keeps the cost of the delivery of that solution low. If you have a higher risk merchant, you might want to take pins. So you don't want to change the application every time you're doing something different. You deploy the same app, and then you have to make sure that within that app, you have a deep product notebook of different solutions that you can tie to it. One that lets you go to market quick, and then another one that allows you to take care of those payment transactions. So the first thing you see in their solution is a mode of entry neutral. Some people swipe with PIN, EMV and PIN with print, without print, contact or contactless transactions. Then there is encryption in the hardware. There is encryption in the software. It comes with telecommunication carrier neutral. It's working on 3 operating systems today: Android, Apple, and BlackBerry. We still give BlackBerry as well, BlackBerry, but we still handle that. It comes into the gateway. That's where the rest of the magic is happening for encryption and decryption. It goes to RBM on a one-to-one connection, and then what ends up back at the phone is only reference number. There's never sensitive data at the device. It's sensitive did is a 2CI level 1 security automated gateway, and then from here, we provide an array of additional tools that the customers that are on the field can use. Live reporting, you can see the signature capture for those transactions. And it is worth noting that in the case of RBN, their project has a very extensive bin table at the application level. So there's intelligence at the phone level, there's intelligence at the gateway level, and then there's intelligence at the processor level. So for example, what that really means is that if I'm paying with a regular Visa and MasterCard, it's going to ask me the regular things that bin instruction gives you. But if I'm paying with a local government card, it might tell me, in addition to a PIN, I want you to also give me your national ID. So it's going to make decisions locally at the app based on the very deep bin table, and then go from there and make additional decisions when it communicates to the gateway and the processor as well. And an important thing of this undertaking, and I won't take much time of this next slide, that I was really thinking, do I share this slide or not, but I will go ahead and give you a quick share in here. You know, you look at a project like this, 5,046, oh, let me change it before you guys take pictures here. Good, that was quick. But when you have, you know, 5,046 development hours, if you have your regular, and I think the only thing I can show you from this relationship is that your regular vendor-customer relationship is not going to work in this kind of undertakings. There's too many things that are moving, and please consider this. This is a project from a company that has been doing this since beepers. So I can guarantee you that our developers in BlackBerry and Android can do in an hour what other folks will take 10. So when you see that kind of deep understanding, what happens is, in this kind of mobile ecosystem deployments, is what you don't know what hurts you. So, you know, we didn't know the government was going to change the tax regulations in the middle of this deployment. Now you have EVA, now you have consumption tax, now some is automatic, sometimes it's manual. If you're a restaurant and you happen to sell newspapers, now I've got to pay EVA on the food, and then I got to pay consumption tax on the newspapers. And then you have that in Android, and then you have that in Apple, and then you have that in BlackBerry, and then you have that in some things that are going to remain in the reporting in the local database of the phone. Some things are going to change at the gateway level, some things are going to change. So you embark in these projects, and you have to do it with a company that have enough experience not to handle what you see that is so simple, right? A lot of times you get up, you swipe a card, and it looks like it's easy and it's done. It's the deep things that, trust me, will happen, and you need to be able to move with that as they take place. A project like that also has a lot of backup. In the case of RBN Mobile, actually, they've been gladly supported from MasterCard International for this project. And they are way on the way to make a huge, now that they went out, again, what they call pilots is very different to what other people around the world call pilots. So now they're going massively with a marketing effort to be able to get that project through the full region of Colombia. And what I like about what they have done is that they have done this project from the vantage point and the benefit point of all the players in the ecosystem. So it's not just one player concerned about making money on this deployment. They have, of course, because they're owned by banks, they have to really take a look at what are the benefits for the acquiring banks that I'm serving. Then, what are the benefits for the telecommunication companies that are involved in this? And of course, the telcos in regions where you already have close to 100% penetration, there's no new customers to sell, right? So you gotta either keep the ones you have, or you gotta increase the revenue per users of the ones that you have, both of them, right, and on board. So these kind of solutions are accomplishing that. You can see some of the pictures of the deployments that they have done on the field. We are very happy to report things that really surprised us. I'll show you this particular picture in here. A lot of the businesses that they were rolling this out to, we were considering to do, you know, very conservatively, to be able to hit 10 transactions a day. That's the kind of segment and merchant that was going to take care of this kind of solution, that was going to use this solution. And then we had some of these small merchants that are really cash-intensive merchants, because they're, you know, bakeries and things like that. And we realized that when you open the ability to do electronic transactions, people will use it. So merchants that we were expecting to do 10 transactions a day are, you know, hitting 70 transactions a day. Is that better enough for the merchant base? On that's the other side of the equation is another story. But however, once you give them that ability, those things take place. So lesson learned from this project, and you can, you know, read what they wrote. I think particularly to have a strategic partnership, again, if you're looking at a project that is changing countries, If you're looking at a simple project, you want to be able to just take some people from the bottom of the pyramid, and that's good enough for your project. You know, maybe those are simple goals. But if you have these goals to include banks, telcos, to change a region by increasing electronic transactions, you know, your regular vendor-customer relationship is no longer going to work. You need a strategic partnership that is going to be able to look differently, not be able to say, every time something, I'm going to be so many hours, let me bill you, so many hours, let me bill you, so many hours approved, let me bill you. It cannot be like that. It has to be with the end goal of that project in tune, and I think we were able to proudly accomplish that with this project. Finally, make sure that you do not tie your deployment to one given peripheral. Again, it is as silly as creating your full ecosystem tied to a given phone. Tomorrow there's going to be somebody doing that for half a price in a different way. So you don't want to start backwards. Ultimately, you want to be able to tie it up to different peripherals, because different merchant segments might have different needs. And if you're working in different regions, you will need that. Of course, then you got to validate the ones that you decide to put in your product notebook, so make sure of that. And I think extremely important, particularly in these regions with these processors that have huge grasp and have an established already infrastructure with many merchants, you want to do it in a way that you don't disturb, or they don't have to dramatically change what they're doing today. So what we accomplished in this particular case for RBM is that for them it is just another POS talking to them. So the full infrastructure became the mobile extension of everything they do without having to change anything, exactly anything of what they're doing today, because otherwise you can move a boat that big, that quick. So having said that, that's all I have for my presentation. Thank you so much.